The words hit the room like a sudden power outage during a thunderstorm. Bonuses are cancelled across the board. That is exactly what he said, standing there in his pressed chinos and crisp button-down shirt, while the operations floor still buzzed with the afterglow of triumph. Cold slices of pepperoni pizza circulated alongside plastic cups of flat domestic beer pulled from the breakroom refrigerator, everyone laughing and exchanging high fives because the third quarter numbers had just come in at an astonishing 282% above forecast. People clapped each other on the back, voices hoarse from celebration, eyes bright with the kind of pride that comes from turning impossible targets into reality through sheer relentless effort. My name is Nathan Riley, 48 years old, and I have directed operations at Hargrove Manufacturing Partners for the past 16 years, after serving 14 years in the Army managing supply chains across multiple deployments. I understand pressure, deadlines, and the quiet satisfaction of delivering results when everything seems stacked against success. My voice still carried the strain from endless conference calls that sealed the massive contract with that national distribution giant, my email overflowing with executed agreements and congratulatory notes from partners who rarely bothered to respond. Even Marcus from procurement allowed himself a rare grin, and Marcus had not grinned sincerely since his divorce became final years earlier. Then Connor Hargrove strolled in, posture perfect, hair styled with product that reflected the overhead lights, exuding the effortless confidence of someone who had never truly earned his position. He offered no congratulations, no acknowledgement of the collective achievement, only a sharp clap of his hands to demand attention. Everyone quieted instinctively, sensing the shift in atmosphere the way soldiers sense incoming trouble. He surveyed the room with that practiced expression of solemn wisdom and declared that the extraordinary performance proved the team could achieve greatness without financial incentives, that true excellence stemmed from internal culture rather than external rewards, and therefore all promised bonuses would be redirected toward future growth initiatives. The celebration evaporated instantly, replaced by stunned silence and the faint hum of the ventilation system. Several colleagues stood frozen, cups halfway to their lips, while others exchanged glances that mixed disbelief with dawning anger. I remained seated, observing him closely, noting the subtle curve of satisfaction at the corners of his mouth, the expensive leather shoes that likely cost more than many monthly mortgage payments in this building. Warm coffee touched my tongue as I drank, the mild burn registering distantly because my mind had already raced ahead to possibilities long prepared. A calm smile formed briefly on my face, the sort that appears when final confirmation arrives for plans carefully laid over many months. I rose slowly, approached him amid the heavy quiet, and spoke in an even tone suggesting we move to the executive conference room for a brief discussion. "Bring your tablet," I added, turning away before he could object. Behind me the room remained motionless, charged with anticipation, while Connor followed with the unmistakable stride of someone certain he still controlled every outcome. He had no idea that the foundation beneath his authority had already begun to crumble, piece by carefully documented piece. 6 months earlier everything changed when Malcolm Hargrove, the founder who had built this company from a small warehouse operation into a respected national player, announced he would temporarily reduce his daily involvement due to ongoing medical concerns that required focused recovery time. During a company-wide video call his voice sounded thinner than usual, though his determination remained evident as he introduced his nephew Connor as an interim observer who would shadow leadership to gain practical experience. Connor arrived the following week radiating ownership, fresh from his graduate business program at an elite East Coast university, quick to reference theoretical frameworks and modern management philosophies in nearly every conversation. His initial comment to me questioned whether relying on established tracking software demonstrated sufficient forward thinking, delivered with a condescending chuckle that set the tone for what followed. Within days, schedules filled with mandatory sessions titled things like dynamic process realignment and collaborative vision mapping, while valued long-time employees suddenly found themselves reassigned or encouraged toward external opportunities. My most trusted deputy, Laura, who had coordinated logistics flawlessly for 9 years, received notice of role elimination masked as organizational evolution, followed quickly by several others whose institutional knowledge formed the backbone of daily success. Connor imported acquaintances from his academic and social circles, installing them in newly created positions focused on cultural transformation and innovative disruption, individuals who spoke primarily in acronyms and abstract aspirations rather than operational realities. I maintained professional composure throughout the upheaval, continuing to deliver results while quietly noting each questionable decision, each shift away from proven methods toward untested experiments. The major contract that ultimately produced our record-breaking quarter originated from strategies I developed during countless late nights and weekend sessions, refined through practical industry insight rather than theoretical models. When Connor presented the final proposal to the client, he emphasized visionary leadership and adaptive frameworks, yet the underlying data and execution plan came entirely from the systems my team had perfected over years. The deal closed successfully, generating immediate revenue far beyond projections, yet public recognition flowed primarily toward Connor's supposed strategic guidance. I absorbed the oversight without protest, aware that certain advantages remained hidden, waiting for precisely the right moment to surface. Connor wasted no time reshaping the company into his own image. Within the first month, he restructured 3 departments, eliminated positions that had existed since the company's early days, and created new roles with titles that sounded impressive but carried little accountability. Laura's departure hit hardest. She had managed complex supplier relationships with an intuition born from years of navigating shortages, delays, and unexpected surges, yet Connor deemed her approach too traditional and replaced her with a recent graduate named Devin who specialized in agile mindset coaching and had never once coordinated a physical shipment. Similar changes followed in quick succession. Reliable veterans reassigned to vague advisory capacities or encouraged to explore opportunities elsewhere, while Connor's network of former classmates and professional acquaintances arrived carrying laptops covered in startup stickers and armed with presentation decks full of circular diagrams and aspirational quotes. Meetings multiplied, often scheduled back-to-back with agendas promising breakthrough alignment or paradigm shifts, though they rarely produced actionable outcomes beyond scheduling additional meetings. Connor frequently invoked cutting-edge principles, questioning why certain processes remained rooted in outdated efficiency models when disruptive innovation demanded constant reinvention, all while overlooking the fact that those same processes had consistently delivered profitable results through economic downturns and supply chain crises. I observed the transformations with outward calm, continuing to guide daily operations through established channels, ensuring orders shipped on time, inventories remained balanced, and client commitments stayed fulfilled despite the growing administrative chaos overhead. Late evenings became routine, the office lights dimming floor by floor until only my desk lamp illuminated spreadsheets and performance trackers glowing with steady upward trends. The major distribution contract that ultimately shattered all projections began as my initiative, conceived during quiet analysis of market gaps and cultivated through months of deliberate relationship building with key decision-makers at the national retailer. I mapped out pricing structures, logistics pathways, risk mitigations, and scalability options, refining every detail until the proposal stood unbreakable under scrutiny. When the time came to present, Connor requested involvement, framing it as an opportunity to infuse fresh strategic vision, so I prepared comprehensive briefing materials and walked him through the core elements multiple times. During the actual client sessions, he spoke at length about transformative partnerships and ecosystem synergies, gesturing broadly while the solid figures and operational commitments I had engineered carried the weight that secured enthusiastic approval. The agreement expanded rapidly, triggering immediate volume increases that propelled quarterly revenue far beyond any prior benchmark, yet internal communications highlighted Connor's bold leadership and forward-thinking direction as the primary drivers of success. My contributions received no mention in his summaries, an omission that stung briefly before settling into cold resolve. That same week I opened a secured folder on my drive and revisited my original employment agreement from 16 years earlier, a document signed when Malcolm still oversaw every major decision personally and valued proven execution above theoretical brilliance. Buried deep within the appendices lay a provision few remembered. Should operational key performance indicators under my direct leadership exceed 275% of established quarterly forecasts, I would gain temporary executive override authority over strategic decisions, including budget allocation and personnel matters, subject only to formal board acknowledgement of the threshold achievement. The language appeared generous at the time, inserted almost as motivational flair during negotiations when such explosive growth seemed improbable, yet it remained fully binding, unaltered through subsequent contract renewals or corporate governance updates. I read the section multiple times under the quiet hum of the office air conditioning, noting the precise conditions and signatures, including Malcolm's unmistakable flourish at the bottom. The discovery did not provoke excitement, only a deepening sense of timing, because activation required not just meeting the metric but choosing the moment when evidence stood irrefutable and witnesses undeniable. I printed clean copies, stored digital backups in multiple locations, and returned to daily responsibilities while Connor continued expanding his influence, approving substantial retainers for external consultants drawn exclusively from his personal contacts. Invoices began arriving for facilitation retreats, cultural diagnostic assessments, and creative immersion workshops, each carrying fees that rivaled annual salaries of seasoned staff members recently deemed redundant. I logged every approval code, cross-referenced vendor relationships, and maintained meticulous records without comment, understanding that premature confrontation would only invite deflection or retaliation. Instead, I focused on sustaining performance, shielding the core team from unnecessary disruption, and waiting for the numbers to speak with unquestionable volume. As the quarter progressed, pressure mounted from Connor's escalating initiatives, yet operational execution remained disciplined, suppliers responded to familiar reliability, clients expanded orders based on consistent delivery, and internal metrics climbed steadily toward territory no forecast had dared predict. Through it all, I kept counsel mostly to myself, occasionally exchanging measured observations with trusted colleagues who shared quiet frustration but feared speaking openly. The foundation Connor believed solid was actually resting on systems and expertise he dismissed as legacy, and every day brought fresh evidence that those foundations could support far more than he imagined, or than he deserved credit for achieving. The morning after Connor's announcement, the office felt hollow, as though someone had opened every window and let the life drain out overnight. Keyboards clicked with mechanical reluctance, conversations stayed clipped and purposeful, and the usual chatter around the coffee station vanished entirely. Colleagues avoided eye contact in the hallways, carrying the weight of dashed expectations for holiday travel, home repairs, or simply the reward for months of extraordinary effort. I moved through the corridors with deliberate calm, greeting people by name, asking quiet questions about ongoing projects, listening more than speaking while noting the subtle signs of fracture, slumped shoulders, forced politeness, the occasional flash of raw resentment quickly masked. Over the following days I arranged brief one-on-one conversations in neutral spaces, a quick walk to the downstairs deli with Marcus from procurement, a shared bench outside during lunch with Elena from sales who had already committed bonus funds toward her daughter's college deposit. Each discussion began casually but inevitably circled toward the same unspoken injury, and in every case the response carried cautious anger rather than defeat. Marcus admitted he had begun updating his resume late at night, while Elena confessed she no longer believed promises from leadership carried meaning. I offered no immediate solutions, only steady acknowledgement that their contributions remained visible and valued, planting seeds of possibility without revealing plans still requiring perfect alignment. Late one afternoon, a secure message arrived from an anonymous internal account containing only a forwarded screenshot of a private group chat named Vision Alliance. The thread revealed Connor and several of his imported advisors exchanging dismissive comments about entrenched staff, labeling experienced operators as change-resistant barriers and suggesting the bonus elimination would accelerate natural attrition among those unwilling to embrace progressive culture. One message from Connor stood out sharply. He wrote that removing institutional drag would finally allow true potential to emerge, adding that veterans of the company often confused stability with innovation and needed firm encouragement to evolve or exit. Reading those words stirred something colder than anger, a clarity that personal ambition had overridden any sense of shared purpose. That same evening I expanded my private documentation, pulling expense reports and vendor contracts approved during Connor's tenure, tracing patterns that grew increasingly difficult to justify. Substantial payments flowed to limited liability entities registered to individuals sharing educational or social connections with Connor, billed for services described in vague terms such as immersive strategy facilitation, organizational energy recalibration, and forward-leaning narrative development. One retainer exceeded $45,000 for quarterly insight intensives delivered by a former classmate whose public profile emphasized motivational speaking and personal branding rather than manufacturing expertise. Another invoice detailed $32,000 for proprietary framework licensing from an entity that appeared to exist solely for this transaction, while smaller but repeated charges covered off-site vision quests and premium beverage provisions framed as cognitive enhancement support. Cross-referencing approval timestamps against performance milestones revealed that many commitments occurred during periods when operational budgets faced scrutiny, yet these external engagements proceeded without competitive bidding or measurable deliverables. The cumulative total approached $190,000 in 6 months, resources that could have reinforced staffing, upgraded essential equipment, or directly rewarded the teams driving unprecedented revenue. I compiled the evidence into structured summaries, highlighting discrepancies and potential conflicts of interest without editorial commentary, allowing the numbers and relationships to present their own indictment. Throughout this period, operational execution never faltered. Shipments departed on schedule, client satisfaction metrics remained high, and advance orders continued accumulating as partners responded to reliable delivery amid industry uncertainty. The contrast between ground-level effectiveness and upper-level extravagance grew stark, building quiet momentum among those who recognized the imbalance. Occasional glances exchanged across conference tables carried new meaning, subtle nods acknowledging shared awareness without risking open discussion. Connor moved through the building with undiminished assurance, scheduling additional culture-building events and circulating memos about elevated standards, apparently oblivious to the erosion beneath his position. I maintained disciplined patience, verifying legal interpretations of the override provision through discreet inquiry with remaining counsel familiar with foundational documents, confirming its continued validity and precise activation requirements. Each confirmed detail strengthened resolve, transforming waiting from passive endurance into active preparation. As the days shortened toward winter holidays, tension thickened like gathering storm clouds, everyone sensing impending change yet uncertain of its direction or force. I kept the compiled materials secured, timing deliberate, understanding that revelation demanded not just evidence but the right assembly of observers to ensure irreversible impact. The foundation Connor had built upon convenience and connections was revealing its fragility, while the structure sustained by experience and consistent delivery stood ready to reclaim authority at the precise moment numbers and legacy aligned beyond dispute. I scheduled the meeting for a Thursday morning when everyone would still carry the raw edge of the bonus announcement, yet far enough from the weekend that attendance felt mandatory. The invitation carried a neutral subject line: third quarter performance review and forward planning. Recipients included department leaders, finance representatives, key operational staff, and Malcolm connected remotely under the stated purpose of providing founder perspective on long-term incentives. Connor accepted immediately, adding a note about looking forward to celebrating collective achievements, oblivious to the careful selection of attendees who had either witnessed the upheaval firsthand or held authority to influence outcomes. The morning arrived crisp and overcast, the conference room windows framing a gray skyline while inside the long table gleamed under recessed lighting and the faint scent of fresh coffee lingered from an untouched carafe. People entered quietly, choosing seats with subtle intention, those closest to Connor clustering near his end, while others aligned nearer to me, the division unspoken yet palpable. Malcolm's video tile appeared early, his image sharp though his posture suggested lingering fatigue from treatment, eyes alert and expression unreadable. Connor arrived precisely on time for once, tablet in hand, greeting allies with quick shoulder claps before settling at the head position he had claimed months earlier. He opened with light remarks about momentum and shared vision, voice carrying the polished cadence honed through countless classroom presentations. I waited until the room settled fully, then activated the projector and began with straightforward data displays, revenue curves climbing steeply across the quarter, client acquisition timelines, fulfillment accuracy rates, and cost efficiencies that had improved despite internal turbulence. Each slide presented clean visuals and precise figures, narration kept factual and measured, allowing the trajectory to speak without embellishment. Connor shifted occasionally, interjecting brief comments about strategic inflection points and leadership alignment, yet the uninterrupted progression of evidence gradually quieted his contributions. When the final performance summary appeared showing actual results at 282.7% above forecast, the room held collective breath, the number glowing large and undeniable. I paused deliberately, letting silence underscore magnitude, then transitioned to the scanned employment agreement page, the override clause highlighted in clear yellow marker. The provision read exactly as remembered. Upon verified exceedance of 275% under my operational leadership, temporary executive override authority activated automatically across strategic domains pending board confirmation. Malcolm's signature anchored the bottom alongside legal stamps unchanged since inception. Before reactions fully formed, Connor leaned forward sharply and declared the clause obsolete, superseded by subsequent governance updates, and certainly not applicable given shared contributions to success. He tapped his tablet and cued a prepared audio file, volume rising to reveal clipped segments of my voice from various meetings, edited to suggest frustration bordering on insubordination and implied willingness to undermine transitional leadership. The excerpts played briefly, taken out of context from longer discussions about resource allocation and process preservation, stitched together to paint a picture of resistance rather than stewardship. Several attendees frowned, uncertainty flickering, until I calmly produced time-stamped originals and full transcripts showing surrounding commentary that clarified every statement as constructive critique rather than disloyalty. More damningly, metadata revealed the selective recordings originated from Connor's personal device without disclosure or consent, violating internal policy on surveillance and trust. The attempted countermeasure collapsed visibly, his expression shifting from confidence to realization that the fabricated insurance had instead exposed premeditated deception. Malcolm spoke then for the first time, voice steady and carrying the weight of decades building the enterprise, asking Connor directly why he felt the need to secretly document colleagues rather than address concerns openly. No satisfactory answer emerged, only stammered references to documentation best practices that rang hollow against the evidence. I proceeded without pause, opening the expense analysis compilation, vendor payments totaling $192,000 across 6 months, each linked to entities controlled by Connor's direct associates, services vaguely defined and outcomes unquantified. Side-by-side comparisons showed operational budgets strained while these retainers flowed unrestricted, a pattern impossible to defend as prudent stewardship. Finance leads exchanged glances heavy with professional discomfort, recognizing implications beyond the room. Malcolm requested clarification on approval protocols, receiving only vague assurances from Connor before intervening again, directing that all pending consultant obligations freeze immediately. The override authority, I stated evenly, grants jurisdiction to rectify misallocations and restore intended compensations, effective upon threshold verification already satisfied. Legal counsel present via speaker confirmed validity without hesitation, citing unchanged foundational documents. Connor objected stridently, threatening external review, yet the accumulated weight of performance data, contractual legitimacy, financial irregularity, and his own failed subterfuge rendered protest futile. Malcolm concluded the exchange by instructing Connor to step away from active duties pending formal board deliberation, tone final and laced with unmistakable disappointment. As Connor gathered his tablet and exited, the door closing with quiet finality, the atmosphere shifted from confrontation to quiet reckoning, everyone absorbing that authority had realigned not through force but through irrefutable preparation needing undeniable results. The door closed behind Connor with a sound no louder than a sigh, yet it carried the finality of a chapter ending. No one spoke for several long moments. The projector screen still displayed the expense summary, numbers frozen in accusation, while Malcolm's video image remained steady in the corner, his gaze moving slowly across familiar faces he had hired, mentored, and trusted over decades. I leaned back slightly, allowing the evidence to settle without pressing for immediate reaction, understanding that true shifts in power require space for acceptance rather than forced celebration. Elena broke the silence first, asking simply what steps would follow regarding compensation and staffing stability. I outlined priorities clearly: immediate reinstatement of third-quarter bonuses through reallocation from frozen consultant lines, reversal of recent reassignments to bring back displaced core members, and comprehensive review of all external commitments initiated in the past 6 months. Finance leads nodded confirmation that funds existed once redirected, legal counsel affirmed procedural legitimacy under the override authority, and department representatives expressed quiet relief mixed with cautious optimism. Malcolm spoke again, voice stronger now, stating that the board would formalize my interim executive oversight within days and initiate a thorough governance assessment to prevent similar overreach in future transitions. He added a personal note directed to me, revealing that he had always remembered the override provision, inserted years ago precisely to protect operational integrity should extraordinary circumstances arise, and that my patience in allowing events to unfold had confirmed his long-standing confidence in my judgment. The admission carried subtle weight, acknowledging a deeper mentorship that had guided decisions from afar even during his health absence, transforming what might have appeared as abandonment into deliberate trust. By the following week, Laura returned to her logistics post, followed quickly by other valued colleagues whose institutional knowledge proved irreplaceable once again. Consultant contracts terminated swiftly, several with documented cause that eliminated severance obligations, freeing resources for essential upgrades and team recognition. Office atmosphere gradually revived, conversations lengthened in hallways, laughter returned to break areas, and planning sessions focused on substantive challenges rather than abstract reinvention. Connor pursued legal recourse initially, retaining outside representation to challenge the override activation and alleged procedural irregularities, yet once the board examined full performance records alongside financial discrepancies and the unauthorized recordings, they extended a confidential separation agreement that resolved matters quietly and permanently. Months later, an inquiry arrived from Grayson Enterprises, a larger national competitor based in another region, expressing interest in strategic combination after observing our sustained turnaround and expanded client commitments. Negotiations progressed methodically, emphasizing cultural alignment and operational continuity, culminating in a merger that positioned the combined entity as an industry leader with enhanced distribution networks and manufacturing capacity. The agreement included explicit condition that I lead integrated operations across the new structure, supported by my established team now strengthened through selective additions chosen for proven capability rather than personal connections. Malcolm retained an advisory chairman role, content to witness the enterprise he founded evolve under stewardship he considered reliable. News of Connor's subsequent ventures reached me occasionally through industry channels. He launched a consulting platform promising accelerated transformation for legacy organizations, positioning himself as an expert in disruptive leadership despite the circumstances of his departure. I harbored no lingering resentment, only quiet satisfaction that outcomes had aligned with effort and integrity rather than entitlement. Years of consistent delivery, protective vigilance over people and processes, and strategic restraint when provocation tempted immediate response had ultimately prevailed over flash and connections. I keep the original employment agreement in a locked drawer now, not as leverage but as testament to the enduring value of foundational commitments. Experience teaches that real authority emerges not from titles granted lightly or relationships leveraged aggressively, but from demonstrating unwavering competence through every challenge, earning trust that withstands temporary storms. The most effective leaders understand that organizations belong ultimately to those who sustain them daily, who navigate crises with discipline, and who recognize that true legacy builds through quiet persistence rather than loud proclamation. Patience, properly timed with decisive action, proves stronger than any temporary advantage, and those who build on solid ground need never fear the shifting sands others prefer.